This is the only place in the world where Javan rhinos exist. A vast, almost impenetrable jungle in Java, Indonesia. There are less than 50 of these rhinos left in the entire world. There are none in captivity. All of them live here in Ujung Kulon National Park, on the westernmost tip of Java. Sightings of these remaining Javan rhinos are exceptionally rare. The images in existence were taken many years ago, or are from camera traps. None of them are in high definition. New Zealand photographer Steve Belcher wanted to change this, which is why he started the Rarest Rhino Project.
My goal of the Kickstarter Rarest Rhino project was to actually make people aware that this animal, this Javan rhino, exists before perhaps it doesn't exist anymore. And it's very important that people know this animal does exist. As an individual photographer, it's quite a daunting task because it's a lot of effort to go out and maybe not even see this animal, and then to try and get the best photographs ever taken. But it was also obviously going to be expensive.
Stephen needed financial help to get this project underway, and Kickstarter provided the perfect crowdfunding platform. Other sponsors, like EarthTouch, also came on board with additional equipment. After months of planning as best he could, Steve set off on his expedition. The journey would take him to Java via Singapore, followed by a boat trip.
Of course, I had a huge amount of equipment, and so just being able to get all that gear in to the national park was a huge logistical exercise, and it took 28 porters to carry the initial gear in.
Once offloaded, there was still another 8-hour trek into the jungle to find the right place to set up camp. And on the way there, some promising signs of rhinos were spotted.
So this is a mud wallow area, so the rhino's been here just very recently.
The campsite was set up miles and miles away from human civilization, and Steve was adamant that there had to be as little environmental impact as possible.
And I didn't want to disturb the animals. They're incredibly rare, and the last thing I wanted to do was actually drive them away from the campsite. I didn't have any campfires, so there was no smoke. Everything was cooked on gas, and we made sure that all the rubbish was hiked out at the end. So we bagged everything and took everything else out at the end of the trip.
Javan rhinos have been driven to the brink of extinction by poaching and habitat loss. And even in the midst of what looks like a pristine jungle habitat, an invasive plant is adding to their list of problems.
You are in a jungle environment, it looks all green, it looks like there's lots of food for the rhinos and things like that, but actually in some areas there's a palm tree called the oranga palm. Now this is an invasive palm tree, and the problem is that the fronds from the palm tree are very big and very dense, which means it stops the light reaching the forest floor, so that a lot of undergrowth can't develop, and it's that undergrowth that the Javan rhinos need to feed on. As this oranga palm spreads, there gets less and less habitat.
There are efforts underway to try to cut back the palms, but as with most invasive plants, it's incredibly difficult to get rid of. And the fact that there's so much of it served to make Steve's task all the more challenging. His first plan of action was to install custom-built Canon infrared camera traps. Convinced that these would be his best chance of getting his photos, Steve spent a good couple weeks setting them up. But then, something extraordinary happened.
I started to concentrate actually on just taking some of the scenery shots of the area. As I was doing that, maybe 20-30 meters away from me, a Javan rhino just burst out of the jungle, splashed into the river, splash, 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 and out onto the other bank. It all happened in maybe less than 5 seconds.
Steve began to think that cruising the river in his quiet, inflatable boat might just be the key. It worked.
Okay, I hope the picture's working, guys. It's Saturday 23rd of August. This is Bodine here with me. We just got on the river, maybe 150 meters from here, a Javan rhino just lying in the water. He was like a submarine, just with his horn like a periscope, and he just sat there probably, maybe what, almost 5 minutes. and he then finally at the end decided he had enough of us and bush off into the forest. But amazing. I mean, really good, really good.
Over the next couple of weeks, Steve was able to film and photograph several Javan rhinos along the river. That the Javan rhino is worth saving, there is no doubt. And a population of 50 animals is, in theory, genetically viable, but it's an incredibly complex task.
Greedy people cutting down forests, expansions, rhino horn trade, all of these things put the Javan rhino under incredible pressure. But the plan at this point in time is certainly not to relocate any rhinos or anything like that. They live in incredibly dense jungle. It's just not possible, not like in southern Africa where you could dart a rhino, pick it up with a helicopter and take it out. You just can't do that. So the plan at this point in time is that they want to try and maintain the habitat where they are. But to do that, they're going to have to take on the orangutan and to make more food supply accessible to the rhinos.
While he's under no illusions as to the enormity of the task ahead for saving these rhinos, Steve believes that his work is vital.
Unless people are aware of something, they cannot connect to it. You need to connect to something if you want to save a species. People need to know it exists. They need to know where it is. And by taking these first ever high definition images of this animal, it's a way for people then to be able to see very clearly what this animal is really like. The Javan rhino is quite different than the other rhino species. It's the smallest rhino as well. It also only has one horn. The other thing is that it's a very shy animal. They're not in herds or anything, they're solitary animals. Always withdrew back into the jungle. It never confronted me ever. And it's a very peaceful animal, and I wanted to get that across. And I hope that with these photographs that will raise that awareness and put more pressure on the Indonesian government to supply more protection for the Ujung Kulon National Park. The Javan rhino is right on the edge of extinction. I mean, it doesn't get much rarer than what it is. It's just holding on.